The original dam was much more efficient than this one. You put the powerhouse here, though, the power was created to the right here.
Okay.
With a wheel. But when you get too much water, then you start to lose your head because it goes over this spillway.
Bypasses it.
And then the corner restricts it. So the difference between the pond height and the tail water is less. Warren Augustus Harris III, known as Gus, yeah.
Right? You didn't pull the power and run your machines.
We did originally.
Oh, you did? So that's called
It was
something
called
else.
net billing.
Okay.
So we actually ran our meters backwards, which was great. So you could get the full return of the cost of your electricity. Not an unusual turbine, but one that doesn't get used a lot. It's called a crossflow. Looks like a big squirrel cage. Works well with a wide variety of flows.
Okay.
We're a J turbine, which is vertical. It's created for, say, 100 cubic feet a minute. Once you get to 50, it's almost zero.
Okay.
It's not very efficient.
So by this one, it can handle the influx.
This one can go from about a 15% to 100%. So it still works
That's
fairly
nice.
efficiently, yeah. So we would be standing in water right here. The dam went almost to the building, you see. So there was a 18-foot area here that was all water, open water. I think this was probably built in the early 1900s. The dam was probably built, I'm not sure of the date, but I'd say 1850. It was a wooden crib dam, just from that wall to at least where you're standing. I'd say a little bit further. I'd say here. I remember hitting the walls. This was open water. And it would go, it went there, and then to get the power, it turned. So it would drain going the same direction as the dam into an overshot water wheel. So there was no electricity originally being made here. It was belt power. So they turned the wheel, turned a shaft, and turned a pulley, and turned belts. And all of those ran throughout the buildings. Started off as wood, between concrete and steel. Went from only making horsepower by turning belts.
So is that called hydropower?
No.
No.
Is this called hydropower?
Hydroelectricity.
Hydroelectricity, yeah. Hydropower really is creating horsepower, so yes, turning belts. So there was a structure there, similar to that size. It was a wooden
Wheel.
cribbed area to hold a great big water wheel. I think it was probably I bet it was a 20-foot wheel. It dropped 14 feet at least to a canal, to the tail race. After it went over the wheel, it turned and went to the right here and under the buildings. And some of those beams there, I'm quite sure, would help hold that cribbing in the big wheel. And then it went into that canal. You see your pond would go up. You know, the more you got of this, the more power you have.
Right.
The farther away you can discharge the power water, the better off you are. Like if we go down to Tannery, Tannery has a separate big, almost like another river beside the river, where the water got discharged into. And it goes down, oh God, it'll go down 2 football fields before it goes back into the river. Almost like a dam.
Right, it is a dam.
So it narrows down and restricts, so it backs up. So we lost.
And you don't want restriction on that end. You like restriction on the pond end.
That powerhouse basically has to stop like a 100-car freight train going, say, 3 miles an hour, just like that, without moving. You know, so it's a tough thing to do. So we're really anchored in bedrock over there. And you shut the water off, the machinery can't move it. They did a great job. You know, their engineering in the 1800s and efficiencies, you know, structurally and hydraulically, it isn't any better today.
No.
And what they lost mechanically with belts and pulleys, we still lose in transformers and gearboxes. You lose power in transforming the power that you're generating to the right voltage to go out. And then when you bring it back in and use it, you put it into a gearbox. That creates a loss of power too. Yeah, that's one thing they improved in the mid-1900s is the J turbines. They came out with a variable pitch blade.
Yeah.
So the turbine could be 4 times the size of that building over there. Some of these real big, like the Hoover Dam.
Yeah.
But the blades on those, instead of being fixed, can actually move just a little, with a pitch. Because that was a kill. So they put wood in there and dried it by putting steam into the building. And later the second floor was added. The original Mason apartment would have been that one 3-story building over there.
Yeah.
And the idea of that is all the poles and shafts went into that building. And then they added on things. We added on that block building.
Yeah. Right now we have another flow. We see more current
A lot of turbines
coming.
up the other side of that wall.
What would cause that not to run? Why wouldn't they run it?
All you're doing is wasting. You're probably you're wasting mechanical advantage. You're wearing out bearings and lots of other things that you don't need to be running. Well, the computer inside knows that.
Oh, the computer, because it's that ratio thing. Once that ratio hits its peak, it's worth turning on.
More the revolutions in the wheel. They're not creating power today, and they could be, I think, even with this little flow, because inside that powerhouse is an 8-foot turbine and a 4-foot turbine. So we normally would shut the 8-foot down and keep the 4-foot running. Yeah, we built all, none of this was here. We started that in 1975 or 6. The power goes right into the grid. But back then we actually took the power into the plant and used it. 10,000 volts or something.
Okay.
You have to put into the power line here.
The power goes in here, up into the grid, and out to the pole?
Yeah. Just used by maybe you. Yeah, you see the concrete there, and the steel framing that holds the stop log. The pieces in between, the wooden pieces between the steel are called stop logs. There's not a catwalk up there. We added that. There was federal, state, and some local. This had a pond, so the dam was somewhat functional. Tannery was drained, so there was no water being backed up. The state of Massachusetts looked at reflooding like we were going to pave it. Actually, in the long run, by creating water in there, you were talking about plant life, but that plant life creates food for fish, turtle.
Right.
It's tough sometimes when they look at a bank. That's the where the water can be and the water can go to, that area there. They worry about. They worry about it from an erosion standpoint. But the nice thing about dams like this too is that you could shut them down, only pay them more money per kilowatt, and only ask them to run when you needed extra power.
So the water from where we were.
Yeah, that's Ray Clapson. You look over here a little bit to listen to the sound.
Yeah, I'm listening to it.
That's the powerhouse is open.
It's
So
running.
I bet they pulled the turbine out, so it's just a big hole.
Oh, and water's just flowing.
There
Okay.
was an island. You can't see it. Actually, I don't think it's quite an island. What happened, the river comes in, and then it's like a peninsula, really. So the water comes in over the side,
Yeah.
and then that peninsula, and then it goes around, and what you're seeing over there is where that big area went around. A J turbine, and put it in here. It wasn't the optimum size, but it was so much fun to take one that was already in town, fix it, put it in and use it. So that's a vertical turbine with probably 5 or 6 blades. So think of a jet engine, tip on its end, but with less blades. So the water runs around it. It runs
So it
around
spins
it.
like this?
runs around it, and so the blade is curved so it goes down, so the water comes in and then drops out the bottom of it, comes in the top, drops out the bottom. They were created in Europe probably in the late 1800s, like 1890 or something, when those were first saw. Outside of that, then you would have had a wheel, a water wheel. There was another model, I forgot what they called it, but basically the same, just a little bit of different shape to the blade. And you know, further on in the 30s and 40s, then they created a blade that was variable, so they could make that move with a hydraulic cylinder. And then, you know, you create that turbine so you don't have cavitation. You don't want these little bubbles, because they'll actually tear the steel apart. Create the shape. Then when you change the shape, because you have less water flow, now you got bubbles. So you went from no cavitation to definitely, maybe you gained some power, but you also created maintenance problems. The whole powerhouse is almost open to water, because there's two mounting holes in there. So two turbines go in there, two J turbines. So the water comes in on a big slab. So there's like a first floor and a second floor where the water exits and then finally goes back into the river. Do you remember where the old substation was down here? You know, it's back from the bridge, but maybe less than a football field back from the bridge is where this water finally goes back into the river. So it's 2 football fields at least down before it goes back in. So what they were trying to do, you can see how flat this is in here, because they were trying to gain height between the pond.
And now you're going to have natural secondaries start developing, and like you said, more different animals and all this will be fun.
It's healthy, it's a different environment. I mean, when we flooded it, it just became a different environment for different plants. I think some of the problem that they are torn between the gain in hydropower and the gain in the problems that might be created in flooding. So when you have a dam, you back it up, what happens down the river? If this dam has a real low hazard, in other words, all dams are assigned a hazard value, really low. And where can it breach it? It wouldn't breach over here. It would breach way over the other side, and there's some bedrock over there. Well, yeah, Mason and Parker, you know, the company that I bought, owned from the Whitney Dam and then once into this pond, and then I bought about from where we're standing down to almost the old substation, the land. That's a neat powerhouse, you know, the way it's constructed and built, the low head.